Ah, yes. Monday it is. Metal Monday, indeed. And 2 more sleeps till Zach Hyman, correct? I think I've got my math correct. 10-12-60 is how you can reach us on the program today. We will look back at the draft and maybe more importantly, look ahead to what's coming. God, I'm saying that with crossed fingers for the Edmonton Oilers. 12:40 today, Marshall Ferguson will join us. He's the voice of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. You're going to see him this year, and he's doing some games on the CFL on TSN, and also check out his website, CF Perspective. Does great work in analyzing football here in Canada. Marshall will take a look at the Hamilton Ticats, who have aspirations to not lose again in the Grey Cup. They're hosting it this year, and they have all of the requisite talent on playing side and coaching side to get back there. We'll get into that with Marshall at 12:40. 1 o'clock, our hockey insider, Darren Drager, will join us, wrap up all of what we experienced at the draft, and things are moving rather quickly in the National Hockey League and will continue to once free agency swings open completely. And at 1:40, if you're a Houston Texans fan, you might have seen the news that Deshaun Watson is in camp. Don't get overly excited. The fracture is deep, it is real, and the Texans, after long saying they did not want to move on from Deshaun Watson, are in fact now taking offers and expect the market to get very, very, very overheated here for Deshaun Watson in the coming days and weeks. But he is back in the Texans camp. 10-12-60 is how you can reach us. Matthew Wannick, we probably could spend some time, if you want, looking back at what the Oilers did in the draft, but I have a feeling now people, they got that over there. That's done. That business, that box is checked. But now I feel like I used to when I knew on the rare occasion I was getting a big gift at Christmas when I was a kid. Maybe it was the hockey game from the NHL Players Association with Al Hamilton on the cover. Maybe it was a Seals pennant. Maybe it was a book for some reason that I coveted. But I feel like waiting for the Zach Hyman news to drop is just a little too much for someone in my condition.
You don't like this? You don't like the idea that it's done, but we have to wait till Wednesday for it to be finalized?
Yes, selfishly, yes, that's exactly how I feel.
Well, then you wouldn't like soccer at all. I'll tell you that right now.
Well,
how long some of those
we
deals
could open that up for
they
debate.
go for months, but it'll be nice Wednesday when it opens up at 10 o'clock and they could get the deal done. Now the question is, do the Oilers put out the release right at 10 o'clock or they wait a little bit?
Well, I wouldn't wait, but then I'm kind of anxious to see him here, and like a lot of people, if this was the biggest box to check for this organization, then they've checked it. And you want big game hunting, and we can debate there are other big names out there, and yes, you'd like them all to be here in Edmonton. Not possible. But if you believe that this is one of the largest beasts out there on the Serengeti to track down, then they got him. Now, that it can't be all the work that gets done by Ken Holland. We know that as well. But I would, if you, again, asking people what they think of the job by the general manager is kind of a delicate situation in this town on the best of days. But I would, now that this has been kind of slow roll till we get to Wednesday, when it is official, I would think there has to be at least a golf clap for Ken Holland, doesn't there?
Not if you don't like the term.
Well, okay, I guess we've got term detractors, right? I don't even know, what do you want to call them? Not termites. That's it's terribly pejorative, but
it's one of those that people who will sit there and think that potentially that this isn't the best deal. That maybe for the first few years it is, but this has a real potential of being a terrible contract. And giving him 7 years at 5.5, oh boy, this is very risky.
But I'm saying it like it's my money, but there is risk to all of this.
Right, but
it's inherent in all of this business, and in certainly investing to this degree.
But a lot of discussions that we've had through free agencies, if there's one player who is more the David Clarkson type contract that's going to be happening, it's going to be Zach Hyman. That people look and go, this is the guy that is most likely to go with this is going to be trouble. And why not go different ways? Find someone else who's maybe cheaper, less term. Yeah, he's maybe not as good as Zach Hyman, but you're not going to get into trouble. Whereas with Zach Hyman, there's the potential of 3-4 years from now, you're looking at this going, we're stuck with this for this long? Really? That's the fear that people have, that Zach Hyman is the guy that is the mistake of this free agency.
But you can't run scared. and you can't be risk averse. And I don't think this is necessarily risky for the player. I understand contracts, like some people, Matty, don't age well.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the back end trepidation, the fear, whatever you want to call it. But if you're going to do this and do it with the speed with which Ken Holland, short of saying win now, although he kind of said it, well, that demands you to turn the throttle high, and this is exactly that move.
Right, but Zach Hyman's not the only free agent out there.
No,
you could go out this another way, and that's where you look at it and go, why do you have to go on this guy? Why do you have to give this guy 7 years? That's why there was going to be some people who aren't going to be too thrilled by it, and I see their point entirely with that. That it's not, you can't, there are going to be risks whenever, but it's not like he's the only left-wing free agent out there that you have to go get this guy because there's nothing else. There's other ways to go about this. So why this guy where, 3 years from now you could be in a serious problem because you went for this one and not anyone else?
We will get to your text here in a little bit at 10-1260. Mike in a red go-kart. God, I like the image of Mike texting from a red go-kart. We'll get to you in a moment. Quickly, Matty, on Deshaun Watson. I've seen a couple of polls out there. You knew this. I mean, this split between the Texans and their quarterback was coming, and coming from a long way away. We know I think there are 22 files or allegations, rather, separate cases, if you want to call it that, against Deshaun Watson that are pending. And so that obviously creates and should create a backdrop to the relationship has with that organization. But for a long time, they were doing the dance. I'm presuming that they were doing that as much for their fans as anything else, and maybe to try and plump up the market a little bit. When that trade is consummated, that is going to be, it feels like it could be one of those Herschel Walker trades, that whoever is going to do it is going to give up a tremendous amount, but they may they're reimagining their franchise.
The best thing for everyone involved to have Deshaun Watson come to camp. Have him there, have him play, and work out a deal. One of the best things you could do is play up your value or something like that. Worst thing is just having them split is the worst thing. What's funny to me, though, is that the Texans now decide that they want to trade him. Well, when you could have done this before the draft, you could have done this. You have all these months to go do something with this, and now you're deciding this is the time you could do it, where a lot of teams have kind of buckled in on who their quarterback's going to be, right? And potentially going to miss out on some return. But it's going to be fascinating to watch who goes out and wants to go grab Deshaun Watson, because you can't forget everything that's going on with him off the field.
Do you have yet Olympic fever? I know you and I messaged over the weekend. You confessed you were hunkered down watching Olympics live, or were you giving me the Scott Russell, Steve Armitage version? Maybe some highlights later in the day.
Well, yeah, I'll watch highlights later in the day. There won't be a lot overnight I'm going to watch. I'll have to watch those later. But a lot of things do get, like triathlon, women's triathlon gets going at 3:30 this morning for us here, because I think that's 6:30 out in Tokyo. So at night and stuff, we get a whole bunch of sports, and I love watching my sports at night. So I didn't think I was going to have Olympic fever this year. I was a little off going, am I going to get into this? And through the first weekend, I've been all in basically when I can. And it somewhat sucks that during the day, over the weekend, this time of the day, there's nothing going on because I just want to watch the Olympics. And I've gotten into the skateboarding, I've gotten into the surfing, watched some swimming. My love of the Olympics has been there for decades, and it's
even the IOC. Old guys in blue blazers can't ruin it for you.
It's easy to forget about them when you watch, the Canadian flag being raised and the gold medal being put around the Canadian athlete. It's easy for me to forget about the garbage that is the IOC and everything that goes into this. And well, even the Tokyo in itself, when they won this bid, they said the weather would be perfect in July. It's perfect mild weather, and it's not. And anyone that looks
weren't they basically swimming in a hot tub?
It's the reason.
I saw the temperature was
yes. Yeah. It's okay. Absolutely. It's one of the worst heats you're going to find in the world at this time of year.
Heat in the truest sense.
I was people on just reading a story from Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports, and people commenting on his post going, "I'm from Australia. Their heat's worse than our heat at this time of year." I've been there, and so That everything that the IOC is and the countries that go bidding for it, all of that is trash. It's terrible. It's the worst. But it's easy to forget when you watch the athletes do their thing.
Mike in the red go-kart says, after listening to Gregor, Oilers sign Hyman, Barrie, keep Koskinen. How can they think as an organization this team is better? Barrie is not a replacement for Larson, which the Oilers need. Glad Smith is back, but can he repeat last year? Question mark. Can't come back with Koskinen and Smith. They need a better goalie than Koskinen. That from Mike, enjoying life in a red go-kart. It doesn't, I mean, there's a lot of stuff moving right now. James Neal, notably, I mean, I'm not saying he has moved, but there's stuff percolating. So I would say stay in the ready position for the Oilers addressing the goaltending situation. You may not end up liking what they're doing, but I don't believe you could come back with that pairing. And have, and be I mean, yeah, can Mike Smith replicate what he did last year? I think he could get close, Matty. Did he catch lightning in a bottle? Maybe. I'm not going to say it was a fluke, because when you work that hard at your craft, as Mike Smith does, then I don't call that fluky. I don't call that just sort of happenstance. You're deserving of the success you had. But I don't think an Oilers brain trust would go, okay, we're gonna run it back with these two. We'll run it back with Smith. I don't think you could comfortably go into next season thinking you've got it nailed at that position with that duo. So I don't believe you're going to see Koskinen back here. As for replacing Adam Larson, didn't we say this just after we got on the air, Matty, and of course the news broke early that morning, that Larson's toolkit that he brought to the rink every night, I maintain was underappreciated. And the physicality that, you know, which he brought to that Oiler defense is an ingredient. Yeah, you know, can Duncan Keith take a little bit of that? Obviously, Darnell Nurse, the focus is on him in terms of doing a lot of things. But Adam Larson can be replaced, but not replaced easily. And you've seen Hamonick's name out there, and you've seen some others bandied about. Probably can get close. But the idea that Adam Larson, too bad, so sad, he's gone, we may end up revisiting that one. And I don't want to I got into a back and forth prior to this show with a listener, actually, to Tide show, about this whole idea of, Larson forsaking the Oilers, and he'll pay for that. And I don't buy any of that. Didn't at the time and still don't now. He looked after himself. That's okay. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens, and the Oilers happen to be the, not the beneficiary. All right, let's get to some other texts here. Yes, there are other UFAs, but back to the conversation that not all those targets want to be an Oiler, so the pool is smaller than what's available on paper. We also can't assume Holland never talked to other options and players, because if Hyman was the only target, only target he is targeted and talked to, then the Oilers have a bad GM.
Okay, well, he hasn't talked to anyone else. Free agency's not open.
No.
He's not allowed to.
Well, I mean, yes. There can't be open courting, and the Hyman situation is different because he was provided the opportunity to go out and seek interested parties.
Yes.
That's what makes this difference. On the other thing, I mean, Maddie, you and I both, I think we all know that conversations can't be had, wink, wink.
Right.
People are jockeying for position, engaging interest.
But it's not the full level where you get to talk to the player, where you get to bring the player to your city. They brought Zach Hyman into Edmonton.
Yes, they did.
They didn't get the chance to possibly do it with any other player. So, no, to that texter, they didn't speak to everyone officially or pull it all out there. Because in one way, it's not allowed. There's a big tampering thing with this. Now, you're right, there is some wink, wink, nudge, nudge with all that, but it's not the full negotiation period.
All right, we'll get to more of your text here as we work our way through. I got a couple that I really want to dive into. All right, coming up here, 12:40, Marshall Ferguson, Canadian Football League, as we know, back to business. August 5th is the season opener. It will feature the team Marshall knows very well. He'll be along at 12:40 to talk Hamilton Ticats. This is the Dave Jamieson Show on TSN 1260. 12:20, TSN 1260. The Dave Jamieson Show, and if you couldn't tell, around here on Mondays, they are Metal Mondays, and that would certainly qualify. Marshall Ferguson from CF Perspective and the CFL on TSN. He'll be doing some games this year across the network. He'll join us at 12:40. We'll talk Hamilton Ticats, and Darren Drager, our hockey insider, at 1 o'clock today. TSN 1260 presents Great Outdoors Comedy Fest. 2 shows. The first, Friday, August 13th, David Spade, Nikki Glazer, Donnell Rawlings, and hosted by Sean Lacomber. And on Sunday, August 15th, Chelsea Handler will headline along with Sean Majumder and Cindy Rivers, Edmonton Exhibition Lands Racetrack Infield. Tickets on sale. And again, it is August 13th and August 15th. Maddie, last time you've been to a comedy show, or have you ever been to a comedy show?
Actually, literally right before the pandemic, in late February of 2020, a buddy of ours who works for Virgin, Ty Jordan, and former 1260s, Quiet Wyatt, they did an open mic night. So I went to go watch them.
Hello. I had a buddy who I used to work with in Vancouver. He opened for Jay Leno.
Seriously?
Yes, yeah. Well, yes. I would not pull that out of my hat. Yes, he did, and was very good, as I recall. It was many years ago, and I may have been overserved at the Commodore Ballroom. But yeah, I mean, people were laughing, and then Jay Leno made lots of people laugh. So, all right, we'll get to your text here, and I should remind you that tomorrow night, Edmonton Stingers play-by-play back here on TSN 1260. They will play Fraser Valley. We'll have the broadcast for you at 8 o'clock. This text says, it seems like a lot of people think it's Holland's fault. Yes, almost no free agents will come to Canada, and almost no free agents will come to Edmonton. The players that Holland actually gets to speak to are few and far between, even when free agency begins. A lot of people believe, but all the free agents in the league should be targets of Ken Holland and the Oilers, yet almost none of them would come and play here. And the sea salt, have I read this correctly, Maddie? And the sea salt and the stipulated in their contract. Now, I may have been out of touch here on some new terminology, but is sea salt something we're now using? I know what sea salt is used for. And I've swum in a saltwater pool, as I'm guessing many of our listeners have. Am I missing something?
I must be missing something, too.
Okay, well, that's fine. Zach Hyman is one of the few people that has said that he would actually come and play here. Well, yeah, I mean, yes, that's notable in and of itself. I don't know how pervasive, and I know it's been reported, I think, if I've got this right, Matty Friedman there was sort of a subtext to Larson signing in Seattle that he no longer wanted to be connected to that Hall trade, wanted to put all that behind him. This is a fresh start and so on and so forth. I don't know how pervasive the old I don't want to go to Canada thing is. Those who like it a lot. Those who have some success and I suppose are in some cases close to family, friends, like it a great deal. But it carries with it a heightened level of scrutiny that clearly you're not going to find in other places. But I'm not a player and I'm not a player agent, so I don't know. It seems like that's an easy thing to reach for when a guy that you think would work on the team of your choice, let's say Edmonton, doesn't come here and maybe lands someplace else that you think is maybe not as attractive as a destination, not the city, but the team and the situation itself, and you go, well, it's because it's Edmonton and it's Canada.
There is some
I mean, yes, I understand that there's problem
with the Americans. As with the Americans, as Gregor pointed out last week, we have seen very few Americans come up and sign in Canada in general, and Friedman even did have it in his piece. But other players are willing to come up all over to Canada. And I'll just say this: just because someone wants to play here and they're a free agent doesn't mean you have to go sign them. Then you don't just have to build your team through free agency. In fact, free agency is where you actually ruin your team more often than not. You could build it through draft. You could build it through trades. That just because Zach Hyman's here doesn't mean you have to go in with a terrible contract. Just because he wants to play in Edmonton. To me, that's not an excuse for the contract.
Salsa Steve, great name. Love that moniker. We are not a destination city for players. We are the coldest city where you're subject to higher taxes, higher scrutiny, and are not a contender yet. Plus, most spouses are never excited to move to Edmonton. So in order to entice players to come here, we need to offer extra term or payment. That is the reality. If Holland doesn't go in hard, he'll come out empty-handed, and then everyone will critique him for getting nothing. Salsa, if I can call you that, I think there's a lot of truth to that. A lot of truth to that. You're going to have to, go hard monetarily, of course. And I can't imagine what other inducements the Oilers could offer other than, hey, we believe we're closer than maybe some people will give us credit for. Look who we have in terms of the assets and on our roster. That's a pretty good story, Matty. Again, we're not, I trust, I promise you I'm not wearing Oiler goggles when I'm saying that. This comes in, just to break this up a little bit. Hey, guys, I'm not a huge fan of the Olympics, but I had a blast watching those girls skateboarding last night. More blood left on the course than a whole NBA season leaves on the court. There you go, a shot, Maddie, at basketball, but also a tip of the hat to the young women who were amazing. 13 and you're winning an Olympic medal, Maddie. Do you want to go back to let the people know what you were doing at 13?
I was watching the Olympics. No chance I was playing.
Not competing.
No, but I loved the skateboarding. Both Saturday was the men's and yesterday was the women's, and it was a lot of fun to watch because it was its first year in the Olympics. I'm still very confused by the scoring. Watching on Saturday, there'd be like a skate that would happen that, based on some of the other skates that I saw, I'd go, well, that's got to be a great score. And it was a brutal score. And then things that seemed very simple and basic were getting these high scores. And, like, you watch diving and swimming or something like that, you then eventually start picking up and you could figure things out a little bit. I couldn't at all when it came to the skateboarding. I was just so frustrated with the judging. But it was a lot of fun to watch because I've never really watched skateboarding before. And both what the men did on Saturday and what the women did yesterday, it was a lot of fun.
I'm trying to remember when the IOC started to bring in, I don't want to use the term fringe because that's not right, it's not fair, and it makes me sound stupid, which happens a lot. But when they started to broaden the scope of the sports that they were bringing in, both in winter and summer, and maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, summer you've got a little more latitude, some more things that you can pull in. I'm trying to think when it started. But I give that organization very little credit for much. But I like that they said, you know what? We're traditional. We'll die being traditionalists. We got to open this up because clearly, skateboarding is a massive sport. As somebody who watched Tony Hawk in person, that's hugely, hugely entertaining.
Since about 2000 or so, they've really been
is that what it is?
Making a lot of changes and adding sports or taking away sports. And it's always fun to see what the new sports as they come in. I remember the 2010 Vancouver Olympics, the first time I saw ski and snowboard cross. I fell in love with that sport. It was just unbelievably so much fun to watch. And every now Winter Olympics since, that's one of my go-to events. I look on the schedule and go, when is it? I want to watch it. Because it is fun to see these different things that are coming in. And because sports isn't always just what it was. And there's different things. And we'll see how they keep progressing and they keep changing things. I know one year there's talk, and this might annoy some people, but e-gaming and stuff, and I always find that's why I love the Olympics. It's watching things I don't always watch.
Iceman blames the brutal sports media for the reason no one wants to sign in Edmonton. Armchair GM Awanek running everyone out of town.
Well, Iceman.
There you go, Matty. Laid at your feet.
Well, I'll throw this to Iceman. Actually, according to Adam Larson, in a sense, through Elliot Friedman and stuff, it was the fans and social media that were an issue.
If you were in a situation, and let's just for the moment, if that's what is being reported, at least by Friedman, and you were a player, you liked your situation as a player, your teammates, the opportunity you got here. I'm just wondering what's the breaking point? And I saw the text or message that DM somebody sent him, about McDavid getting 100 points, and he hadn't had that in his whole career, and we responded in a very funny way. But when it hits the breaking point, and at that point, I know a lot of people say they don't pay any attention to media, social media, and so on and so forth. I don't know that to be true. It sounds like a pretty good, sort of self-defense mechanism that you can trot out there. But I wonder what that breaking point is. He'll get criticized in Seattle. you'll never get to a place that is, I mean, maybe Florida is, I don't know the market, where truly you can play a game, good or bad, and it really doesn't move the needle very much. And therefore, you're not going to maybe come under the kind of intense, pulverizing you get here or Toronto or, well, any Canadian city. Matty, you want to take the Beeve up on his challenge here? Can you all talk about the Oklahoma-Texas SEC move? I know it's American, but it's massive in North America. Where do you think things fall otherwise from it, like Pac, Big 12, and that fallout?
It's the end of the NCAA as we know it, plain and simple.
Yep.
It's the answer to all your world's questions is money, and this is a huge money thing. It's not a sport thing, because I don't know why Texas and Oklahoma, especially when it comes to football, wants to join the SEC. They can't even win right now in the Big 12 that much.
It's not about winning. It's about
the money with everything in this.
Money.
And it's now, because now it's the reaction is the SEC's already, it's the strongest football conference. They just get stronger, plus they add basketball. Like they've been a growing basketball power in the NCAA. Mm-hmm. This now strengthens them when it comes to basketball. Now, what are the moving pieces that come from this? What happens with the remaining members of the Big 12? There was talk of them joining the Pac-12. How does the Big 10 respond to this? And who do they try to pluck out of this? And basically where this is going to is either we're going to have two massive conferences or we're going to just have one. We're going to throw away conferences in the end. That one I feel a little less likely unless the SEC starts just adding everyone. But it's everything that the
which
NCAA
they could do.
Absolutely. But everything that the NCAA has been up until now, which has been my entire life, your entire life, Dave, like for a long time, that's thrown out the window. It is completely changing. Football, basketball, it's just completely wild now, and it's a little sad. There's a lot of sadness to this because there was something about watching your conferences and then you go to the playoffs and things like that. But the SEC now gets to recruit Texas. It's just unbelievable. Like, I know some of the football coaches are mad, but now they get to go recruit Texas, and it's going to be just huge for them. And money, though, money.
Mm-hmm. It's a win now, says JT. It's win now mode. Awanix doesn't quite get it. Bringing in Hyman for a higher cost fixes a left wing, a major wing issue, while not mortgaging the future. Holland's still keeping our first rounders and drafting well. Toronto has no cap space, no picks left, and no winning to show for it. Holland is being smart and patient while trying to add pieces.
But I disagree with that positioning in a sense because, again, it's not Zach Hyman's not the only left winger out there. Again, for me, I would rather see the Oilers be bringing in Thomas Tatar on a 2 or 3 year deal that's easier to get out of, as opposed to Zach Hyman, where I think in the first couple of years it could be fine. I could also see in this being potential problems years 3 and 4. Oh, what's coming up in 4 years? What's coming up in 5 years? There's a couple players that are free agents. So if a deal goes terrible. How do you recover from that when he's the guy like this for a few weeks? This is all I'm going to say with Zach Hyman. I've said it myself, and there's others. He seems to me to be the mistake of this free agent class. So seeing him get 7 years at more than Nugent Hopkins, not a fan of that. I think I'd rather go give the extra money and go get Gabriel Landeskog. Or again, I would rather see someone a little bit lower than Zach Hyman, like a Thomas Tatar, and go about it there. Because, again, worst case, you're out of that contract in a couple years. Or it's going to work just fine and you'll still be good.
From Vin, hey, Dave, regarding Adam Larson leaving because there's a bunch of fans in the city who think with their rear ends, I can't believe these guys, pro athletes, aren't too arrogant to care. Just saying. I mean, athletes of any stripe are, men or women, are terribly single-minded. I'm not saying that they are not human and not, they too can be hurt by words people say, but they have a level of toughness when it comes to a lot of things that a lot of us don't. So I'm not dismissing it entirely. It's his decision. He had a relationship with, the fan base, I guess. That he wasn't terribly comfortable with, or at least in part. I'm not going to say it's Seattle may have offered, money aside, opportunity for him that Edmonton couldn't. And yes, people keep saying it's Seattle. Dummy, yes, I get that part of it too. But all the aesthetics aside, and the ocean and the great seafood, maybe he just needed a clean, fresh start, away from a whole bunch of noise that he may be getting or may have gotten while he was here in Edmonton. All right, when we come back, Marshall Ferguson. This guy knows his stuff, and he really knows the Hamilton Ticats as they get ready to kick off the season. They'll open up against the team they lost to in the Grey Cup, the last one that was played. We'll check in on the Cats next. This is the Dave Jamieson Show on TSN 1260. 1241, TSN 1260, the Dave Jamieson Show. Darren Drager, a hockey insider from TSN. He'll be along at 1 o'clock today. And then Fred Davis at 1:40 covers the Houston Texans. For SportsMap Radio. Fred's been with us before, and news out of the Texans camp is Deshaun Watson has returned, but not for a good time nor for a long time. He will be moved at some point in the not-too-distant future. So we'll get into that with Fred at 1:40 today. 10-1260 is how you can reach us, and many of you have. We'll get back to those texts here in a little bit. The CFL season gets underway. Of course, camps ongoing for the Elks and everybody else in the CFL. And August 5th, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the defending Grey Cup champions, it feels like a very long time ago that they won that, will take on the team they defeated that day in Calgary at McMahon Stadium, the Hamilton Ticats, and we'll get into that. And, of course, the Elks home opener is August 7th against the Ottawa Redblacks here at Commonwealth Stadium. Joining us now from CF Perspective, and you'll get to see his work, and it is excellent on the CFL on TSN this season, Marshall Ferguson. Marshall, thanks for joining us. And the Hamilton Ticats, other teams could only wish they had this kind of a problem, 2 number 1 quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's pretty special, isn't it, Dave? It's good to be on with you again. I know that there's a lot of teams around the league that wish they had the problem, but at the same time, there's a tension, I think, that's building in and around Hamilton at this point, just because, yes, those 2 quarterbacks respect each other, and yes, you want to be able to use either one of them because either one of them you think can get you towards the Grey Cup like they did last time that we played in 2019. But I also think that there's – I don't think anybody will admit, there's a certain amount of pressure that goes into the idea of picking the right one. And I think both of them are going to have to play at some point this season. There's no shame in that. But the reality is, no matter who you choose, they're going to be good, but you really want to choose the right one. And so they're not really talking about that. And I don't think that there's going to be any controversy when it comes out, whether it's Masoli or Evans, but they're going to get themselves, I think, a player out of those 2 that's going to be able to lead the team, inspire the guys around them regardless, and get them to some pretty big wins, which obviously, I mean, August 5th is fast approaching now, 10 days out, and the idea of going into Winnipeg and being around with that crowd in the house and the Grey Cup rematch and all the rest, you need somebody who is ready for that moment. And that might lend itself to Masoli getting the start just because he's the more experienced guy in the CFL of the 2. But Dane Evans has played in massive games in the NCAA. People can go back and see he played at Tulsa, and there was a game on the road against Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma. I mean, that's about as big an environment as you can possibly get. So they're both prepared. They're both ready. But, man, there is some tension there, I think.
Masoli, and tell me if I've mischaracterized it, is the quarterback who helped the Cats get to a position to do what they did last year, but because of the injury, and Dane Evans kept the train on the rails and got them to the Grey Cup. It didn't end the way they wanted to, but he was more than a placeholder quarterback in Dane Evans, and clearly he demonstrated that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the interesting way that we remember this, and I think we've all gone through this in sportsman life over the last 18 months or so, is that we try to reach back into the memory bank and remember exactly how something unfolded. And the details are a little foggy, right? So people that are thinking back about how Hamilton actually got to the Grey Cup, I think there's this sentiment that, yeah, Masoli was the guy and Dane came in and just kind of did his job. And, yeah, he made some nice throws, but, the team around him was so good that we make excuses, I think, for why Dane was able to get there, and we make excuses for why Jeremiah was able to be so proficient. The reality is Dane was like 9-2. As a starter, and obviously the last kind of taste in your mouth is the one that's the strongest, and certainly that Grey Cup did not end or even start the way that you wanted. I've watched that thing probably 5 times from start to finish since we've gone into the pandemic, just out of interest, or maybe to be studying Chris Cuthbert and why he's such a magician at calling CFL football games now that I'm going to. But
yes.
But I also get an opportunity to go back and watch that, and I just think to myself, Dane in that game never had a chance. Because when you have Jackson Jeffcoat and Willie Jefferson flying off the edge at the DN spots, and Adam Bighill up the middle, and you've got Steven Richardson, a really dominant defensive tackle for Winnipeg, and. I mean, the list goes on and on. He never got a chance to set his feet in that game right from the very first drive. And once they were down, you got to start throwing, and Brandon Banks goes down and all the rest. So he really got kind of put behind the eight ball, I think, in that game. And their takeaway from it a lot of the time is, well, he just wasn't ready for the moment. That's not true. Like, he's got an opportunity, I think, to really stake his claim. And listen, if he comes out and he gets announced as the starting quarterback, I have full confidence he could go into Winnipeg and go shot for shot with Zach Collaros, a CFL veteran of 10 years at this point. So it's a pretty special situation, as you say. I don't think you've mischaracterized it in any way, but I think people should realize that Dane Evans is a pretty unique and special quarterback that would likely get a chance to start on a lot of teams around this league.
Marshall Ferguson with us here on TSN 1260 from CF Perspective. You'll also be able to see him on CFL on TSN this year. All of that said about the quarterbacks, there's still just one Brandon Banks. And I mean, that's one of the things about this league. He might be 5'7" and 150 pounds, at least that's what they're listing him as, but he is still... I don't know where you've got him on the grid of most dynamic players in the league, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the number one spot because he there isn't much he can't do on a football field.
Yeah, and the thing that always jumps out to me with Brandon is that his ability to separate, and that's the thing that we always talk about with receivers. Is yes, you can have your Shaq Evans of the world who are big and strong and can outrun people and they can be physical over the middle and all the rest, but really it doesn't matter if you are 6'8" or 4'8". If you can separate from the defender and you're open and the ball gets put on you in space in the right spot at the right time, you're going to get yards, you're going to get touchdowns, you're going to produce. So that's what Brandon Banks has always done is separate. And he has a bit of an untraditional route running style, I guess, for nerds and people who enjoy offensive football the way I do. He doesn't really follow any patterns, Dave, which I think that makes him a really interesting study and a really difficult player to defend because he doesn't, when he's running a corner route, he doesn't go outside release and straighten up and run to the corner. He just plays with speed. So if you decide to leave the inside open to him, he'll say, okay, and he'll run inside. Well, now he's running towards the safety, and the free safety eyes him up, and then boom, all of a sudden he breaks out to the corner, and he's gone because he just runs away from people. So he does unpredictable things. He plays really fast, and I think that they allow him to be in the system with Tommy Condell where he knows that he is the speed guy, the toy guy, but he also knows that he's got full control of the plays that are being given to him. Like, he understands what they're trying to accomplish with him, and things have been designed around him to have success. And the great counterpunch of that, of course, is that you get a much more traditional route runner and a much more, I would say, traditional receiver overall in Braylon Addison. Like, getting him back from the NFL, I wouldn't be surprised if Addison has a better statistical year than Brandon Banks, but Banks still has the major impact on the game that he has in past years. So those two together, I've got them as the number one most dynamic in the league. I think right there in Edmonton, you're looking at Darrell Walker and Greg Ellingson, completely different conversation, more size, probably a little bit less speed, more solid hands, I would say. But, I mean, those two guys side by side, if you're going NBA Jam and you're playing 2-on-2 receivers and you're putting them through drills, that's a pretty spectacular couple of tandems that we have in this league. And that's not even to mention, Brian Burnham plus anybody out there in BC.
There are teams that have historically been very strong in, any of the facets. Defense has been a calling card in Hamilton for a long, long time. A player I really like, Jagarrett Davis. You got Simone Lawrence there still creating all sorts of havoc from the linebacker spot. Tell us about that defense this year.
It's different. I think they're going to evolve. I think every year is certainly you're going to end up getting a couple of different guys in different spots, and maybe there's the odd injury here, or somebody gets nicked and you got to find a replacement for a couple of weeks. But they were really planning in 2020 on having this incredibly dynamic group. It was going to be Delvin Breaux Sr. at the boundary corner. Okay, well, he's retired, so 2021 you've got to move some pieces around there, be it Jamal Roll or someone else, and then you think about the middle linebacker spot. Well, the plan in 2020, you signed Larry Dean as a free agent, bring him back in. And the idea of having Larry Dean alongside Simone Lawrence was just tantalizing because we had seen what they'd done previously back in 2018 together. And it was so productive, and it was so special to see teams trying to run through the middle. And if you're lucky enough to get past Ted Laurent, well, Larry Dean's waiting for you. And if you get past Larry Dean, well, Simone Lawrence is going to clean up the pile. So it was a multi-layered defense that they were planning on having, but then Larry Dean signed Saskatchewan, and we all know what happened there with the Achilles at this point. And so they bring in Javon Santos-Knox, He gets an opportunity now to go in that middle linebacker spot. The DNs, I think you're going to see Mason Bennett, the young player that's native of Winnipeg that went down to North Dakota. He's going to get a lot of run, I think, at defensive end. That's going to be, taking somebody like a Julian Hauser off the field opposite of Jaguar Davis. But they've still got a ton of talent. I think that they've got a really good opportunity to see Tunde Adeleke get named as a CFL All-Star again at the free safety spot. So it's multi-layered. They've got to produce. And the most important equation in all of this, it's Orlando Steinauer and Mark Washington, man. Those guys, they've seen absolutely everything in this league, from being a player to being a coordinator to being a positional coach and now a head coach with Steinauer, where they know how to coach these guys up. And they've got a pretty good talent base to work with, but I really think Steinauer is the difference that separates that group.
It's been a very long time since the Grey Cup was in Hamilton. They've got a new stadium. It's not brand new, but it is certainly not Ivor Wynne. Teams that host Grey Cups, they go to great lengths to say, oh, no additional pressure. We're not aware of it. We know we got a game at the end this year in December. Do you buy that? And oftentimes they will kind of load up, if you will, in preparation of trying to win it at home.
Yeah, that 2013 Riders team was a pretty good example, wasn't it? They're like, what are you guys
Yes.
talking about? We're not doing anything special. Okay, we see you signing every veteran in the Canadian Football League. It's pretty obvious what you guys are doing here. And, of course, it turns out with one of the biggest parties that we've ever seen in the history of the CFL, where basically set the town on fire in Regina for about 6 straight days in the game night. It's just I've seen pictures of it. I wasn't there in 2013, but I've seen the images of people, 10 kilometers away in the glow of Mosaic Stadium, Old Taylor